And we are back. So, yeah, I just want to get the formalities out of the way. I fucked up, last episode. Big time, actually. Base does indeed have a readable, dodgeable pattern, and, this isn't Paige holding me at gunpoint. Skipper literally pointed it out. The Skipper. uh, yeah, no, it's just, how you approach his fight is a bit counterintuitive. You have to get to high ground in order to avoid his jumps. So, it makes more sense when I demonstrate it. Whoops. That's not how I... Ow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Something like this. There we go. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward, actually. I don't remember if the original 7 fight was like this, or if this majorly improves upon it, because I didn't think 7's to be worth my time, but he'll jump about 3 to 5 times, and then shoot on a lower platform. Whether he will jump forward or backwards is slightly random, but otherwise, he is, for the most part, completely dodgeable. And the reason I never figured this out is because I expected the player to be able to jump under him as he was performing a jump, similar to Magma Man's fight. As you know, I play 9 pretty aggressively, but Paige obviously doesn't. He does not like 9. He would not remotely think to follow any examples from 9, and I'm not saying that that particular decision would be a good decision, well, inherently good decision. I think Magma Man's probably the weakest of 9's boss patterns. Unless you want to count, like, spike pushers. But, no, that's just the reason I expected jumping under him to work when it didn't. It still would be nice to have that option, but, and I do think the hitbox is still pretty clunky, and it, you know, just, if you are on a lower platform and you're adjacent to him and he jumps towards you, you're basically screwed. That's unavoidable damage, but, otherwise, the fight's almost completely dodgeable. The, elements of the fight that are random have enough space for them to be avoided in time, so there's really no major problem with the fight. I think with that out of... Oh yeah, one other boss pattern that I fucked up on was Punk's, actually. He doesn't drop to random points of the screen. He drops from either the first quarter, the left third of the screen, or the right third of the screen, which is still not how I would make the boss, like, so you can reliably avoid it by kind of sticking to the center, but it's still, I would make it so that he lands on either edge. That way you have more space to avoid his air attack. But otherwise, that fight is also mostly dodgeable. Because what if you accidentally lure yourself to either edge of the room, and then you're basically cornered and it's awkward, trying to avoid his needle, not punk needles, screw crushers. There we go. So yeah. The reason I didn't put those in an addendum, and a comment addendum, is because, you know, those are kind of major enough for me to actually just address in a subsequent video. Most of the time, I'm familiar with the other patterns, obviously, but I guess I didn't consider those 2 to be worth my time after all this, so, yeah, that one was on me. I fucked up. But, you can see this is a slightly different save state. Yeah. Back when I was getting a Primal's letter, I think. No, I just made a separate save state because I forgot to save after I finished recording. So, yeah. We're going into Dr. Wily. It's a bunch of stray pixels on It's lab coat in his hair, but whatever. That's kind of a smooth UFO movement. That is not a smooth UFO movement. And you can see our beautiful Wily castle. If you couldn't already tell, it was originally kitbashed from a bunch of older Wily castle images, and you can still see remnants of the Wily 5 bubble dome and the Mr. X castle pillar at the center. But the rest was kind of, I guess, just roughly drawn over. Whatever. In case you decide to venture on either edge, there are spikes and... oh. That would be an example of being at the very bottom of a screen while falling. Bit of a weird camera decision. The Wily UFO I was about to say, kind of looks like... It kind of jumbled between sort of non-linear floaty movement, as you'd expect, and a sort of linear After Effects jumbling. 12 principles of animation. Whatever. Can see our Wily 1 has Rockman 7 Famicom Wily 1 tiles. I also forgot to mention the bubble particles in Frigid Man. Apparently some people mistakenly thought they were sort of like an effect that slows your fall. They're just cosmetic, and I think the aggressive quantity of them can be a bit distracting. I should probably also mention some more oddities about the weapons. We have Beat now. Or I should have showed off Beat a bit before. Yeah. Functionally is rather good. You can see, if you notice earlier dev footage, he kind of like has a lemon inside of him, and he sort of embeds it into enemies, which is kind of funny to think about. I don't know if he works exactly like that still, but maybe not the best place to show him off. Whoops. In other news, let's test a weapon that's... oh yeah, addressing the what I said earlier, what I said last episode about the weapons sucking. What I meant was that the way they're balanced is kind of off. Functionally, some of them are actually good, despite all of the main weapons dealing 1 damage. Jolt Shocker deals a good amount of extra damage because of its ability to pierce, so it usually ends up doing an extra point of damage. Then you obviously have the ones with bonus utilities, but the fact that all the weapons deal the same amount of damage and drain the same amount of energy feels a bit off, and is really not, maybe not how I would balance weapons, but really not how any set of Mega Man weapons are typically balanced, and it leaves other weapons such as Scorch Flame, Cypher Decode, and Tune Note kind of in the dust. So yeah. I'm pretty sure all the weapons are supposed to be useful, not just like 3/4 of them. And yeah, you could argue again, like, oh, it's not trying to be Mega Man in its weapon balancing. If all the weapons are gonna drain 1, well, then what is it inspired by? Having all the weapons drain 1 and deal 1. Is it just coding laziness, or just a lack of resources and know-how? I'm not sure. I really don't know. Well, at the time they were being made. Whatever. And like I said, Tune Note could have been good anyway in its original design, if you've ever seen it in action in dev footage. But yeah. Another interesting oddity is that the weapon sprites are notably different from the Buster sprites. So, for one thing, you'll see as I shoot, my head stays locked on the center of the hitbox, but then here, it's actually a bit more normal. Pixels are still a bit off. Like, moves a pixel forward when he shouldn't, but he also has a blinking animation. It's really... The eyes shouldn't be like... They were fine how they were further, like a pixel down. Making them a pixel upward is just... kind of ruins it. Like, no one, like, lifts their lower eyelids to squint and before closing, unless they're... I don't know, it's just kind of unnecessary. But the other weapons, you don't blink. And as I said, the sprites are slightly different and centered differently. You also don't blink when charging. That has a similar thing. Not sure if I already mentioned you can't charge on ladders. I think I did. But, yeah. And then you can see here that the white shine of the Buster, the shine of the Buster is still white. Then you switch to another weapon like Anchor Lance, and it's the color you'd expect, gray. So, yeah. All these weapons are separate costumes on a separate sprite. How to put it? There are separate sprites altogether. I think a good summary is Beat, which also, when you're equipped as Beat, you also don't blink, and you also have that same off-center shooting animation. So, my conjecture is that this was the old animation, which still had the eternal tippy toe, and the older weapon sprites were based off it before it got changed retroactively. That is my conjecture. There might be another more pragmatic reason, I don't know. But yeah, it's just another graphical oddity. Speaking of weapons, I think one last thing, of course, I forgot to basically mention what the Mega Data would have done. They would have been like upgradable chips in an alternate screen of the menu, and you would sort of equip them. They would have secondary effects like influencing your jump, your shoot, or maybe even generating a force field or something. It would have been kind of cool, and again, obviously based off ZX's chip upgrades, which in turn are based off Zero's chip upgrades, which in turn are based off special weapons anyway, which is kind of ironic. Anyway, yeah, that's basically the reason Mega Data was incorporated into the story, because it was going to have a major gameplay aspect, and I don't know, if the game was released 2010, and it left that in, it might have been praised for some of its more ambitious aspects, such as like it could have gotten away with its unconventional design decisions. But I don't know. I guess it's just a missed opportunity that it never made it in. Anyway, we come across Docrons, or as they are known in the credits, Wily Walkers. Most of the other enemies follow their canonical... Most of the other enemies from the official games follow their canonical naming conventions, but not these ones for some reason. I guess that because they have 2 extra HP. Still kind of confusing. But yeah, usually I jump over them instead of stopping to kill them, because the physics allow me to. Yep. It is still weird how they travel through tiles, but at least you can see where they're traveling, I guess. Oh yeah, here's the spot that I died from the ladder shoving me off. Whoop! Yeah. Now you know the spot. It's kind of questionable. Oh wow, I didn't know we were playing X5, oh boy. Actually, it's a reference to ZX Advent. Well, I'm sorry. Suddenly, unused dive man enemy. That's not going to be positioned awfully or anything. Usually, in this stage, despite being completely underwater for a majority of it, yep, you can stand on the tops of these. It doesn't actually... The problematic water physics don't actually pose a major threat. Random ed is random. You see like one in every stage and it never shows up again. Now we come across the second half of the stage. This was just a short breather to set the mood, I guess. We never really see those Wily walkers ever again. They were an interesting stretch. The dive man enemies, not so much. But whatever. Suddenly, Clampman's back in Guts Dozer form. If you've seen his original design, it makes a lot more sense. He looked a lot more Gutsman G-like to the point of having tank treads. So this originally would logically just be an upscale version of him, I guess. I don't know. The actual section isn't terrible, because even though it has the random seals flying in out of nowhere, they are somewhat synced up to how Clamp Dozer operates. If you couldn't already guess his pattern, he does a horizontal clamp attack, the arcing exploding ball, and then a homing missile, similar to Cypher Man's mini-boss. That section is really tough without Illusion Blast, though usually you're gonna want to. Usually you might like independently decide to equip it or any other weapon anyway, because this is a Wily stage. Also, he sort of crashes into the wall, which triggers a second auto-scroller. And having two auto-scrollers consecutively in the same checkpoint feels a bit tiresome, like the player's just gonna get really impatient really quickly. It is... Both sections, for Eternal standards, are surprisingly adequate. Maybe this is the best stage next to Jolt in that sense. Again, those seals could have been positioned better. I think the fact that the walls kind of like fall, the speed at which they fall sort of shoves you to the right side of the screen, so you really don't have a lot of time to see what's coming, case in point. It also makes the health grab at the end incredibly difficult, especially since they fall. The spiked walls keep falling during transitions. So yeah, that's just ass. One funny thing I keep remembering is, of course, well, I knew that was coming and I still failed. Is you know, whoops. I jumped the gun. Yeah, see, now we have to do all this over again. But, you know, basically, Megaphylax's comment on Shinryu's playthrough, where he's all like, "That's a lot of spikes." Get it? Because it's ironic that the man who made Unlimited, it's like, whoa, that's a lot of... Whatever. Alright, we are back. Yeah. The application crashed independently of its faultiness. I don't know, I guess my computer got overworked. It's never happened to me before, but whatever. We are redoing this section anyway. So yeah, let me try it Buster only. The part right after the ladders is a bit extreme. This part as well. Especially with controlling your jump height underwater and all. Maybe it's a good thing you don't fall off ladders after getting hit. Yeah, see, that is incredibly tight. After the once you hit the conveyors, you're technically home safe. Artistically, I'm not a fan of the sort of multiplying effect that Game Maker Studio has, where you can just overlay a sprite with a certain color. It makes the sheep conveyors look really unusually dark. But yeah, another reason this section kind of works, or at least Nico didn't notice anything wrong with it, is of course the fact that in spite of lacking the ability to control your jump height underwater, you're gonna, even if you make a lot of full jumps, usually you're not going to reach the ceiling anyway. Which is sort of good game design in that the level's sort of based around the physics to the point where you don't notice any faults in them. Perhaps I should break out Illusion Blast. Yep. And clutch. Am I gonna... Okay. As you saw, that wall still came down even during the transition. You can die on a transition from it falling, which is just absurd. We finally come to our Wily 1. If the Mecha Dragon block doesn't give it away. Well, the fact that the ground was gonna break. CW ONP 2. I guess it's smart. Not the most creative name in the world, though obviously, if you've played R&R, this is nothing new. As its own, this fight is... It kind of works. The weakness, I presume this is the weakness, makes sense. Buster only, it's very, very tedious because the bubble isn't a hitbox, a damage hitbox, but you have to keep shooting at it because it slowly grows back, and you can't land any shots while it is surrounding. You kind of they kind of eat bullets. So yeah. Other weapons of use in that section would be Primal Bomb. Despite some of its randomness, and of course the water physics, this fight has enough space for you to avoid most attacks. So it's kind of alright how it is, even if the first form is overbearing enough for doing it without weapons to be an incredible chore. And then the last phase, none of the wires reach the edge, so you can kind of just... No. You can mostly just exploit the pattern like this. Sometimes he shoots those homing CW bullets, but it's not enough to usually prove a consequence, so yeah. As far as Eternal fights go, not bad, though. We actually gathered enough bolts for another E-Tank. We'll be needing more of those in the fights to come. Oh boy. We obviously have enough for one more Wily stage. I do like how the lightning syncs up to a sort of Kevin jingle. Even if it's the typical epileptic flash. Oh crap. I was afraid. I was afraid for a moment that it would crash again for some reason. I don't know what that loading screen glitch was. Yeah. Let's see what this tile set's an amalgamation of. We got Dark 3, we got Wily 2 for Mega Man 4, we got frickin' Wily 3 for Mega Man 6, we got Splash Woman pipes in the background. And, Robot Masters from canceled fan games. I believe a handful of them were included in good spirits. Though that might not apply to all of them, as we'll see later on. Whatever. This is actually an adequate reincorporation of gimmicks, as Wily stages should, but things quickly start to fall to crap pretty quickly. I forgot to mention, you know, not sure if I mentioned it in Joltman, but you can indeed sort of clip yourself into a jolt block as it's just forming. My inputs are getting eaten, hold on. Really not how I would incorporate a Bafoo type enemy, or a Yafu type enemy. This first Hammer Joe can actually be reached through charge shooting. Ran out of weapons by this point, you're screwed. Another oddity is that weapons refill after the end of a stage. I mean, after a Wily stage has been completed, so there is that. Usually I sink Illusion Blast into this, although you can technically use Beat if you have them. Oh yeah, another oddity with Beat. He tries to pull a Hornet Chaser. Whoops. I jumped the gun. Thankfully, as you might have heard, there was a hidden 1-up, and it obviously comes back. So nothing of value was lost. Case in point. Might want to sink weapons onto this guy. Another oddity with Beat is that when you're super close to an enemy, he stops homing in. Which, I mean, I don't know. Thankfully, this is an adequate challenge. Oh. My inputs are being eaten left to right again. Not sure what's causing that. Whatever. So similar to Mega Man and Bass, having 1-ups come back in difficult stretches kind of just leads to a 1-up purgatory with no game overs. Which is not disadvantageous to the player, but it's really not how I would balance things. He's not technically a Mega Man killer, which is why he hasn't been showing up. But Paige decided to give him a cameo in the form of a holograph projecting Jiro. And I think this is the right way to go about it. The pattern itself is not terrible, from what I've been able to make of it. It's certainly an improvement on the original Quint fight. Even if he will sometimes shoot unexpectedly, or slide unexpectedly, or use any horizontal attack. Thankfully the slide reaches the farthest edge of the room, so you have a lot of space to avoid it. An adequate mini-boss, and it kind of sets up what's coming along. Now the second checkpoint is where people usually start to lose their marbles, because now we're going underwater, and it's kind of down the shitter from here. This is where the water physics really start to shine, and by shine I mean, well, you're gonna wanna keep your Scorch Flame as full as you can for a lot of, oh god. The buffos in this are barely even avoidable. I mean, not unavoidable, but as in rather, you have very little physical control over your own movement once you get sucked in. I don't know what this vertical seam line is. I don't know if that's always been there, or if the game's just breaking at this point. It is also nice that the fans are colored differently to indicate whether they're just turning on and off or always perpetually moving. So I guess points there. I don't know why Keyman, if you're making a bunch of cameos, is just completely obstructed by the conveyor, but whatever. Oh yeah. There are rare occasions. Does it only happen underwater? Wow, it also happens underwater. Wow. If you hold down the jump button, you jump a second time, similar to Primal Man's roller coaster section. So look at that. You actually jump a second time underwater when you're holding down the jump button. And it occasionally works out of the water. Not often, but occasionally, and I'm not sure what causes that. Hey, it's Dogman from Mega Man Mania, haha. Get it? Cause this section's a bitch. I think I already made that joke, but yeah. If you try to make a full jump, well, no. If you accidentally jump too high and you don't know how the water physics work, that's a full jump and you die to the spikes, so yeah. Speaking of which, whoops. Yeah. I think brace yourself, we'll be seeing that a lot. One up Purgatory. So basically you only game over when you run out of Scorch Flame, I guess. Which is why I've been keeping a reserve. Get out of here. Again, this enemy. Completely pointless, it's just a meat wall. I mean, I like saying that, meat wall, but gameplay-wise, it doesn't really serve a purpose. Other than being in your way, and not dealing damage to you. Unless you're really that dense. It's completely full, yeah. Yep. And, okay. Heh. Heh. Aha. I'm gonna take my time. And then rush it! Whoa. Suddenly Mega Man 10 ladders, just randomly out of nowhere. Suddenly Fire Jiro. I guess I could go to places I need to put it. And then one of the most atrocious placements in the game next to that Balloon Jiro. You want to see it in action? Oh hey, it's Mag Pulse Man from F. That right there, that Bufoo has sucked so many people into the nearby pit. That is just not how you position one. If you do know what's coming in that section, well then you can kill it from a distance, and if you don't know what's there, that's a free death. Really not how you're supposed to position enemies. Okay. Also boost from Time Tangent. Remember how I said most of the Robot Masters were inserted in good faith? Well, that one was probably inserted before, but Paige had a little bit of a beef with Mexican Sunflower. I think justifiably. I guess look up the video if you want full context. But Mech said something bitter after canceling Time Tangent, like fan games are a childish waste of time, and Paige destroyed him with facts and logic. Oh, such a big boy he is. Wow. But yeah, it kind of makes Boostman's inclusion a bit awkward. Yeah. Suddenly, Darkman 5 doesn't really fit in with the rest of the fan-made Robot Masters, but why did I say Darkman 5? Darkman 4. What the hell? Okay, I was worried it would crash again. At this point, anything goes. This fight is actually pretty damn good. He signals when he's going to perform a specific action. You have plenty of space to avoid either move. The only thing I'll have to check in a separate take is, you know, how the Mega Man Killer weapons tie into all this. Because, if I forgot to mention this, but this fight is highly dependent on whether you successfully defeated the other Mega Man Killers or not. If you let any of them get away, then any combination of their respective weapon will apply to this sort of triple fusion of them. So he will also use Screw Crusher and Proto's out of the game. He also used Screw Crusher and Mirror Buster and Blade Cracker. Or maybe the eternal versions of the weapons. Anchor Lance, Punk Needles, and that's a first. Never seen him do that so frequently. His weakness is 2-note. And it's a pretty... whoops. Suddenly he's immune. Why is he immune? I don't know what caused him to be immune like that. That's a bit weird. I don't know if... If that was a move, didn't signal that it was one. But, yeah. Be right back. I'm going to, check how he works on... check how he works with all the killer weapons actually applied. Alright, I made it. Without the killer weapons, let's, yeah, I loaded a separate state and had to do Wily 1 and 2 all over again. That's fine. Anything for this evaluation. So all of them are here now. And so it makes a bit more sense when they fuse. So he'll perform his normal move and then a second move. None of... Oh. Okay. Yeah. Don't know how avoidable any of those moves are. Yeah. This is actually a first encounter for me, so from the looks of things, I'm gonna guess no, you can't dodge it. Wait, okay, I jumped, okay. It's just incredibly tight. Yeah, you kind of have to jump immediately after, but... And even then, sometimes a killer weapon isn't delivered, so it's kind of a... cumbersome, but possible, question mark? Yeah. Okay. Anchor Lance is dodgeable if you position yourself. The only attack that seems dubious is actually Screw Crusher, when he switches sides. Maybe it's a good thing Punk is one of the most doable fights, retrospectively. I think the extra moves make the fight clunkier than it needs to be. And without the moves, it's actually a pretty damn good fight. Yep. See, I tried to jump immediately to avoid the... But then he hit me with a different move, and yeah. So, yeah. The abundance of moves make it hard to predict which one he's going to perform next. Even if the killer moves are... seem to be reliably triggered after, you know, in intervals of the regular moves. Which of those three is kind of hard to predict, and, you know... So, like, jumping in anticipation could save you from Anchor Lance or Blade Cracker, but then you add Screw Crusher to the mix, and it's like... You need, like, split-second reaction time. So, really not a fan of this fight. Well, this version of the fight. Some of the moves are doable. It's barely passable as a fight. Ow. But this is kind of what happens when you overcomplicate a fight that doesn't need to be sophisticated to be hard. Or rather, to be well designed. He also turns immune when on his last point of health, and I don't understand why that happens. Bit bizarre, but I think I've shown everything I need to. Tune in next time, where we do the rest of the Wily Fortress. Yep. Or just Wily 3 and 4. I'll save 5 for after that. Until next time, this is Lava Man, signing off.